after Red Bull, I was thinking about the shootings persisted. Like I say, the things that go on in the media, these things influence me. Pop culture, things that like that I see on the news. And I was looking at my work, thinking about, you're making these really big, pretty portraits, but I don't know if it had the type of impact that I wanted it to, in terms of like the message I wanted to get across. I didn't know if it was a larger metaphor that could speak to deeper issues other than just a type of surface image of what blackness was. And so, and I remember having lunch with George talking about that, like the work, and like he always gives me good advice, and he said, he won't tell me what to do. He's like, well, the portraits won't do the thing that you want them to do, but you need to figure out a way to use that type of identity in a way, but you have to shift it in a way that creates sort of like a recognizable trope. And so I started like researching class photos, photos of fraternal organizations. This is an image of the Niagara movement with W.B. Du Bois in the middle, and then the rest of his comrades around him. And I was looking at the way that people would solve issues before us, particularly in the black community, sort of like what they looked like when they came together to coalesce, in terms of, even though they were individuals, they had this sort of collective identity, almost as though they were one. And then this is a picture of the skull and bones from Harvard. That's George W. Bush up there by the clock, so you can see that. And so I was looking at this type of images to see like people who, while individual, they all think collectively, like in that way. And so, and then additionally, thinking about the masks with Red Bull, I still wanted to use masks, but I wanted to use them in hopefully what I thought would be a much more interesting way. And I started researching sub-Saharan African tribes who use masks. Now, while their masks are wearable, they're usually wearable objects that you can put on, usually carved out of wood. They usually use masks as a way to commune with either spirits or with like spirit animals or with their ancestors. And so there might be a mask of somebody, an ancestor who died a few generations ago, and then through ritual, the tribe will come together, have a large ceremony, somebody will put on the mask, and through this particular ritual, whoever's wearing the mask becomes imbued with the spirit of that ancestor. And the people in the tribe, they talked and commune with the ancestor to solve contemporary problems. And I was thinking about, what if we could do that today in America, like as black Americans, like if we could create, like masks and commune with people who came before us. And so that's where I kind of came up with the ideal of this. And these were the first three that I did, the James Baldwin, Nina Simone, and Martin Luther King masks. And I remember being in my apartment, cutting them out, and not really knowing that I'm making a mask, but not really sure like necessarily where I was going, but I was very compelled to do this. Like as if, I'm thinking like, if I put these on, maybe I'm going to be imbued with the spirit of James Baldwin or Nina Simone or something like that. But the fact that I believed in it that heavily made me feel that I was on the right path in terms of that, and thinking collectively about the way that people dress. And so this was one of the first paintings like in that series that I did. This is called Congregation MLK. And so this is 4 by 10 feet. It's on 3 different canvases because I would do these big paintings and couldn't get them out of my studio. And so I decided to break them up into canvases so that they could get them out of the studio and transport them. But subsequently, this was influenced by an image I'm going to show you in a second. But I was thinking about, when I'm thinking about collective identity, particularly like the national narrative of what Martin Luther King was, that we're fed, like particularly every Black History Month. But what does it look like as opposed to just Martin Luther King as an individual? But if you have 8 individuals, all with Martin Luther King masks, like what aspect of Martin Luther King's persona do they adopt? Did they adopt I have a dream, the romanticized version, which was an incarnation of Martin Luther King at one point, or do they talk about the later Martin Luther King when he said he felt as though he led his people into a burning house? Do we talk, like which one are we talking about? Because like many people, Martin Luther King was a complex individual and went through different stages throughout his life. And so this picture, Congregation, sort of seeks to talk about that, like the complexities of an individual, not only the good things that he did, but then also the potential for what's it like when you see a group of people who are all dressed alike, who all look the same. It can become very intimidating. It can become very somewhat insidious. And if you notice, like the principle sensible figure. He's the only one who doesn't have the mask on, And so this was sort of like where I kind of came up with the vocabulary for this body of work, where people using these ascetic practices to constantly wear black or white, very, very disciplined, wearing masks. And so when you see these masks in my work, there is that trope that goes along with the influence of the African mask, but I'm not painting Martin Luther King. I'm not painting Nina Simone. I'm painting the idea of what that person is in the context of whatever that specific painting is supposed to mean. And so this one was influenced by, I'd seen this image of the NYPD. This was 2014, where there was a police shooting in New York, and the mayor, Bill de Blasio at the time, had talked about, he had condemned the shooting, but he had talked about it being a response to the stop and frisk policies that were going on, that were left over from Bloomberg prior, at that particular point in time. And so the cops, the police unions took offense to that. And so at the funeral of these cops, the police officer, not Bloomberg, I just said his name. Blasio, I'm sorry. As Bill de Blasio was giving the eulogy at the funeral, these cops turned their back on him, during the middle of the speech. And this was the photo that came from it. I thought that was a really, really powerful image to see this group or band of law enforcement officers with their backs turned. And so you can kind of see how that influenced this particular composition, because I kind of saw it as a wall, a thing that's creating a barrier. And I also thought this was an awesome picture because there's a Dunkin' Donuts back there, and the cops returned. And I was like, man, I love irony, right? I do. I just thought that was interesting. Stuff from the same series. This is called Study for the Imitation Game. This one is called Class Photo 1.5. It's a study, but it's a large-scale study. It's, I think, approximately 5 by 4 feet, large-scale charcoal drawing on paper with collage and gold leaf. And so, all of the bodies are drawn in, as well as the chair, and then the flowers and the mask are collaged on, and then there's 24 karat gold leaf for the eyes. And this is me trying to design a painting, and I'm going to show you later, but I kind of kept working through this image until, I got it to turn out the way that I wanted it to be. But once again, that ideal of collective identity, what is the complexities of who we know Nina Simone was? She was a brilliant pianist, but she also shot a man who was making too much noise outside her house, and that's interesting to me that these complex things can exist in a person's body. She had a very, very fruitful life. And so it's what aspect of that life do you take up? These were 2 studies for a painting you're going to see later. The guy on the left, this is Bayard Roy Kahn, and with the gold halo, that is Bayard Rustin, or somebody with a Bayard Rustin mask. And I'll talk more about these later, but these were studies for a painting that was supposed to come. I did these actually, I think 2 years before I actually did the painting that you're going to see a little later, in the slides. But this is kind of how I actually work out ideas too. I'll draw, I'll create things, and then I will eventually maybe come back to it a few years down the road. This is cut by Kara Walker, 1998, I want to say, and it was a single image that she had of a woman jumping in the air so jubilantly that she slit her wrists. Kara Walker, who is one of my favorite artists, I love the way that her brain thinks and the way that she interrogates race. I think her image, but as much as I'm influenced by that and her intellectualism, the morbid aspect of her work isn't a thing that I pull from, but I think more of it in terms of the philosophy that she creates from that. And so this was a study that I did based off influenced by that drawing. So this is called Cut, Kara Walker as well.